Good morning, everyone. Meteorologist Zach Batten for the Bell Park Weather Network. Here to get you going on this Friday morning. I hope everyone had a enjoyable Thanksgiving and you're ready to tackle the last day of the week. If you have to go back to work or have to go outside or doing any of your shopping or whatever you happen to be doing today, I hope you are able to stay warm. If you did go out shopping, it was awfully chilly this morning and will be fairly chilly through the day. And I do want to go a little bit more in depth into what we're expecting this weekend, in particular on Sunday. So let's go ahead and get into it. This video might end up being a little bit longer, but you know what? That's okay. So we're going to start off with your temperatures for the day today. As mentioned this morning, it's pretty cold. Most of us in the low 30s, upper 20s in some spots. Likely eastern Ohio, you're a smidge warmer, and especially along the lake, you're likely in the mid 30s. And as we go through the day, here we are at noon. You see southern Ohio starts to warm up a bit into the 40s, while really the rest of Ohio is hanging out still in the 30s. And as we go through the day, much of the same before we start to cool down again Friday evening. And Friday night into Saturday night is looking even cooler than it was last night, so be ready for that. Now, as we move through the day on Saturday, this is actually Saturday morning, so you see we're cold. We are pretty dang chilly out there. So keep that in mind if you have to venture out Saturday. But as we go through the day, we do warm up a little bit. Still, that warmth creeps up a little bit more into southern Ohio, less so in northern Ohio. And Sunday's going to look awfully similar. And we're going to discuss that more here in a minute. But this is part of the reason that some areas Sunday will likely see some snow and some will likely see some rain. So what I want to do here is jump over to two different models and show you why it's going to be difficult to this point to tell you exactly where is going to be snow and where's going to be rain on Sunday. And then we're going to look at a profile of the atmosphere through the different levels and show you why, even though temperatures won't be that far off at the ground from, northern Ohio and especially northwest Ohio down through, say, like Dayton and then over to, say, Canton, Akron. So what we're looking at here is the surface pressure. And this is how kind of the model's way of trying to tell us where low pressure is going to be, where high pressure is going to be, and that kind of gives us an idea of, where we can expect precipitation and our different kind of weather systems to come from. So right now, this is looking at 1 a.m. on Sunday, and you see our low pressure is hanging out right here, and my drawing tools went away, so give me a minute to get those bad boys back. What I want to do is show you the difference between this model and then another one we look at to show you why we still don't exactly know where the rain snow line is going to set up. So right now, our low pressure is hanging out right there. If we move on to, let's say, 10 a.m., our low pressure is now kind of straddling the Canadian-American border. And if we move on to 1 p.m., our low pressure is now hanging out up here in the northern Great Lakes. And then if we move to 4, see, it's kind of there. It hasn't really moved a whole lot. By 7, it's moved off to the east just a little bit. And then by 10, we've got this kind of low pressure seems to fizzle out a little bit. And then the energy traverses a little bit to the southeast. And our low pressure ultimately ends up down here. So that is the track this particular model thinks this low pressure system is going to take. So really it's kind of like this. And then, going further a little bit, it ultimately meanders out up here. But this is 10 o'clock Sunday night, so most of our precip will kind of be on its way out by then. So what we want to do is go to the same time looking at a different model. So this is also 1 a.m. Sunday. You see this particular model, our low pressure hasn't even necessarily developed yet. You can tell where it's going to be. So this is a little bit of a trough right here. And usually the low pressure is going to end up right in there. And if we step forward to 4 a.m., it's still there. So, and actually, I thought my little drawings would stay up there. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go back to this map instead, go to that same model, and we're going to back it up to 1 a.m. Sunday. So don't forget, these are the low pressure tracks for Model 1. We're going to switch colors here so we can show the track of the low pressure for Model 2. So again, 1 a.m., the low pressure hasn't even developed according to this model. By 4 a.m., the low pressure is now hanging out right here. If we move forward to now 10 a.m., see the low pressure east-west wise isn't far off. North-south wise, well, that's where we have our difference. So we move on to 4 p.m. and you see now, really not that far off. It's actually pretty even north-south wise, but a little bit further west. And then we move on to 7, pretty much, again, same concept. It hasn't really moved much. It's borderline in the same place. And then by 10 p.m., you see it's actually much slower to get out of here with this model. So it's gone from here to here in a very short amount of time. So this one we can actually step further a little bit, and you see it's not until 4 a.m. Monday morning where that low pressure ultimately ends up in roughly the same place that we saw the low pressure in the previous model at 10 p.m. So what does all this tell us? Well, it tells us that timing is still a bit of an issue between the models, but kind of where the low pressure tracks isn't too far off. Now, of course, these subtle differences between north and south and then ultimately east and west lead to differences in where the rain-snow line sets up. And if we take a look, we'll go back and use this here map. If we take a look at not that particular product, but this product. So this is 1 a.m. Sunday, 1 p.m. Sunday, 4 p.m. Sunday. You can pretty much tell right where that rain-snow line is. And we can actually move in to take a closer look. And you can see basically from just about Bowling Green over to, it looks like, just north of Van Wert or so, kind of through the Fort Wayne area. There's your line of rain, snow. And as we move through, that line shifts a little bit, but for the most part maintains, while the rest of the state stays snow. So let's look at the original model that we looked at. We'll back it up a bit, not that far. So this is 4 a.m. Sunday, 7 a.m., 10 a.m., and 1 p.m. You see, this particular model has the rain-snow line actually a little bit further northwest at 1 p.m. By 4 p.m., we're pretty much all rain. Likely the rain-snow line still sitting right here. And as we move through the time period here, you see the rain and snow still kind of hangs on as some cooler air moves in, but ultimately everything begins to move out. So, what does this mean for, how much snow you may or may not see? Well, for most of us, most of the state, it's going to be just rain and maybe a few snow showers to end as the system pulls away. For roughly, since we have cool drawing tools now, for roughly about this area here, as far as we're concerned, this area up here is similar, but it appears that 1 to maybe 2 inches of snow on your grassy and elevated surfaces will be possible. Again, depending on where that low pressure ultimately tracks, you could end up seeing this line shift southeast, or it could shift northwest. I will say one particular model, the NAM model, the previous run of that model had a very consistent rain snow line right in here that matched up with the GFS model. The most recent run of the NAM model has actually shifted that rain snow line up into kind of far northwest Ohio. So, really from about Defiance and then a line up through kind of near Adrian and into ultimately kind of Detroit. So, they're still shifting around a little bit, which is another reason it's still kind of up in the air. But where you do see all snow, you might pick up a couple inches of kind of a wet, slushy snow. And then, of course, where it's all rain, it's going to be all rain. So, real quick, what we want to do is, or what I want to do rather, is show you a profile of the atmosphere in a couple different locations. And hopefully you can see this. We are looking at 2 o'clock Sunday from what would be a weather station in Toledo. So this is kind of one of the same models we looked at. That model is kind of taking a profile of the different levels of the atmosphere. And this is one thing it gives us to kind of examine that layer of the atmosphere, or all of the layers of the atmosphere realistically. So what we're looking at here, this green line is your dew point as you go up in the atmosphere. So, 15,000 feet, 18,000 feet, there's your heights. The red line represents your temperature, same deal as it goes up. This blue line right here is your freezing temperature. These are the temperatures in Celsius here at the bottom. And then these two blue lines represent your snow growth region. So that's the region in the atmosphere where you tend to get the formation of snow. And there's a couple other things that you can look at to determine if snow will actually exist, such as, is there moisture in the region of the atmosphere where you would expect snow to develop? If there's no moisture, well, you can have, the perfect temperatures up there, but if there's no moisture, there's no snow. In this case, I will tell you there is moisture, so there can, in fact, be snow. And one other thing we want to look at is your temperatures from the snow growth region here. So really kind of from the bottom of it down here, which is just under 11,000 feet, all the way down to the surface. Now, if you'll notice, in this temperature column right here, again, these temperatures are in Celsius, so your 0 degrees here is freezing. We don't hit freezing until we get pretty low in the atmosphere. So if I can select them here, you can see them highlight down here with the brown being the ground. You've got a little bit of above freezing, less than 1,000 feet's worth. So that means when that snowflake falls, it doesn't have enough time to melt. And that's why we get snow. At least, with the temperatures the way they are. The temperatures are cool enough pretty much all the way through to maintain that snow. So we're not expecting sleet or really anything like that. It's going to be likely either snow or rain, maybe a little bit of mix right where that line sets up, but for the most part, snow or rain. But you'll notice because we did get above freezing, that means your roadways, things like that, your bridges and overpasses still might end up being a little slushy where it does snow. But for the most part, your roads and whatnot are going to be fine because the ground is still going to be warm. We're still going to be above freezing. So not expecting too many travel issues, but something to keep in mind, especially for your bridges and your overpasses. So again, this was in Toledo, where the atmosphere is plenty cold enough all the way up until almost the ground to see snow. If we move on to Wilmington, so this is the same time, 2 o'clock Sunday afternoon, you'll notice our snow growth region still up here. I will tell you there's still moisture there. The temperature profile for the atmosphere looks very different. In this case, we hit freezing about 3,000 feet above the ground. And then we are freezing all the way down to the ground. And in fact, we are well above freezing for most of it. So that means above this yellow line, you do have snow falling. But we do hit about 3,000 feet above the ground. And then that snowflake is melting. And because it warms up pretty quick, you're melting that snowflake pretty quickly. And thus you have rain when it actually reaches the ground. And because you're still freezing at the or still above freezing at the ground rather, you have rain. If you had kind of the same profile but you were freezing at the ground level, then you might actually get a little bit of freezing rain. But we don't have that, so not worried about that either. So that's kind of the difference in the air masses and why we can see your snow up in northwest Ohio with this particular system, but you're expecting rain for really most of the rest of the state. Now, the atmospheric profile from eastern Ohio looks fairly similar to Dayton, to the kind of the Dayton area. A little bit cooler, but still warm enough in kind of the low level portions of the atmosphere, the few thousand feet above the ground, to melt that snowflake and get rain at the ground. So again, that's kind of what we're looking at here. So just a recap, Saturday is going to look great. Friday's really going to be a pretty good day. Maybe some lake effect rain showers in northeast Ohio for your Friday. For Saturday, it's still going to be chilly, but it's actually going to be a pretty okay day out there. And then Sunday, your morning is going to be pretty fine. Your afternoon is when that rain and or snow, depending on where you are, moves in. Looking at snow in northwest Ohio and rain basically everywhere else. That system moves out Sunday evening, and then Monday, not looking too hateful either at the moment. So with that, we'll go ahead and wrap this one up. If you would like to know more or interested in, a bit deeper dive, more looks at the models as they come in, let me know, and I can do an update this weekend, probably around the Ohio State game, because, we'll be watching that. Go Bucks. Until then, or until Monday, at the very least, we'll see what happens. Might pop on and do an update Sunday or something, maybe a little live stream or something like that, just to kind of see where the system is ultimately setting up. But for now, I'm meteorologist Zach Batten with the Bell Park Weather Network. I hope you all have a fantastic Friday and a fantastic weekend.